You weren't unclear. Read that again. You weren't unclear. You explained. You repeated yourself. You cried. You tried different words, different approaches, different conversations. And still, nothing changed. Because the problem was never that they didn't understand. The problem was that you believed understanding would make them care. Part 1. The endless explaining. One of the most exhausting parts of a narcissistic relationship is how much explaining you do. You explain why something hurt. You explain your boundaries. You explain your feelings. You explain your needs. And every conversation feels like you're starting from zero. So naturally, you think, maybe I just haven't explained it the right way yet. And that belief keeps you trapped. Part 2. The hope that kept you trying. I remember believing that if I could just find the perfect words, everything would finally click. They would understand. They would see my pain. They would change. But looking back now, I wasn't really searching for better words. I was searching for proof that they cared. And those are two very different things. Part 3. The realization that changed everything. One day I asked myself a painful question. If someone truly cares about your pain, how many explanations should it take? 1, 2, 10, 100? At what point do we stop blaming communication and start looking at motivation? Because sometimes people hear you perfectly. They just don't respond the way you hoped they would. Part 4. They heard you. This was the hardest truth for me. They heard me. They heard the tears. They heard the frustration. They heard the loneliness. They heard everything. The issue wasn't awareness. The issue was what they chose to do with that awareness. And that realization completely changed how I viewed the relationship. Part 5. The lesson. Healing started when I stopped asking, how can I explain this better? And started asking, what if they've understood all along? Because if they've understood all along, then my problem was never communication. My problem was accepting what their actions were telling me. If you've spent months or years trying to explain yourself to someone who never seemed to hear you, I want you to remember this. You weren't unclear, you were hopeful, and sometimes the most painful realization is discovering that understanding was never the missing piece. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Love Unfiltered, because healing begins when we stop making excuses for patterns and start believing them.